thank you so much for chatting with me. I've admired your work for some time, and so I'm really excited to hear about how you created the world behind Saturday Night. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'll start by flashing back to some quotes I've read about how you approached your work. Actually, on Hail Caesar back in 2016, you said on that film that you had a chance to go back in time and explore and execute how they did it in 1950, and sort of trying to work as a production designer of the 1950s. Did you take a similar approach here, trying to design the world of Saturday Night Live in the same way they would have 50 years ago?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. I was saying like along the way earlier today that how when I first read this script, I was so excited because I had actually felt like I've done this before because I had done it before. It's what I do. I design and I build and I create sets for whatever time is sort of necessary for the film. And I was just so well versed in what this could be because I had actually done a little bit of work in the late 80s for the set shop that built the sets for SNL. So I was actually there a couple of times, and I've seen the show a couple of times over the years. So I was just like, I get this. I know, a lot of times I have no idea going into a movie how to approach it, or I have to become an expert on the subject matter very, very quickly. But I really felt like I could make a difference in this movie. So I was so psyched when I got the job, because it's my first time working with Jason. But that was definitely the approach, like use everything that I have learned along my career and put it into this movie. And it was absolutely the case. And I have fun on all my movies, but this was just like, yeah, like I was, in the theater during this at one time, and we did this and we wheeled that set in. And when just I just put it all to work, all from memory and what was in the script, and it was a blast to stand it all up in my head and then in reality.
Mm. Yeah, I had no idea that you had worked in that shop. How did that specific experience, seeing some of the behind the scenes all those years ago, how did that influence your approach when you actually came out of this movie?
Well, there was a couple of things, and um, in my time at that shop, they let you out a couple of times, and go load this in here. So I got to, go a couple of times, but it was just something that it was just sort of a feel of what the environment was and how everything. It wasn't like uh the whole thing was made for radio, that studio, so there wasn't any like formal way into that stage. Now we created that in our set with a freight elevator, but I just remember everything having to be super small, going up a passenger elevator, and loading it in and seeing all these things in the hallway and like all this chaos, and somebody answering the phone, yelling for people in the hallways, guy delivering food from the Carnegie Deli. It's just like this world. I'm like, what is going on? How is this really going to happen? So I don't know. So it was more of a I don't want to say less technical, but more of a vibe that
Mm.
kind of knew had to was worthy of getting in there through what I remembered.
Hmm. That's awesome. Well, yeah, for a film as steeped in history as this one, how does that change your process? Do you dive into research first thing, or do you still take the time to sketch things out just from your brain first?
Um, well, it was very important to honor what was there, and we certainly weren't making a documentary. But everybody knows where a monologue is delivered from SNL, and that home base set has changed so many times over the years. And they actually, it's interesting because they changed it even through the first year, two or three times. And that's just what, like Eugene O'Neill, the original production designer, who did it, for like 48 years. sort of, it was like a rotating. He came from repertory theater, and that was like the first sort of thing that he designed for TV. But coming from, a regional theater, it was like also revolving around. So the home base and everything changed. The environments changed quite a bit. But I really wanted to honor what that was, and it was like an older tenement, Lower East Side tenement apartment. With that little walkway and the brick platform in front of it, which played a huge story point in the movie, which was in the script, which I'm so glad Jason and Gil put in about putting the bricks in, which really sort of, was like a metronome and also a clock that created the ticking clock till the last brick went in. But I wanted to get that right. And the Billy Preston thing. Those were the two things, and the Wolverine set, and everything else around that. I sort of had to, because those are the things that were I could actually see watching the first episode and and tell what they were, but there wasn't a lot of documentation of except for the show, which was kind of like dim and on an old, videotape that was, 50 years old. So it was really hard to see. So I took those three things, boom, 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 and made the world, around those. So I wanted to get those as close as possible. And I think we did that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. How much authentic gear and props was there anything connected to SNL that you were able to actually source from gear, props, anything like that?
No, I mean there really wasn't. So we had to I get like the whole thing was built in Atlanta on a stage, and we had to yeah, we were on a movie soundstage, but we had to create, a TV studio. So all of the, Eric Steelberg and his team, and Claudia Bonfi, the decorator, and a lot of people. I say Claudia because everything you see on camera falls in the art department. And in this particular case, you saw all the lighting on the stage, all those they're Mole Richardson lights. They're like a pinkish red that are so iconic with a couple of decades that they don't use anymore because they're not LEDs and they're incandescent. So we had to like source all of those things, and there wasn't enough of them. So we had to build some and put our own lights in. That created the ceiling for the stage area. Now, everything through the doors was also baked in, the lighting. When I say baked in, it was practically put in the ceilings because you saw everything, and it's the responsibility of the art department, to in this case, to actually light the scene. So along with Eric and his gaffer Dan, there was a lot of testing of lighting equipment that would be sufficient to light the scene to shoot on film, not digital, but also be visually pleasing to the eye. So there was a lot of that sort of to figure out.
Hmm. Yeah, and you referenced the set earlier and how, yeah, of course, you had to build this studio in Atlanta, but because the movie plays out more or less in real time, the set plays such an important part. It's almost this maze that people are walking in and around. Did you and Jason work to like fudge the environment to make it fit the story a little bit better, or was the layout more or less what it was back in 1975?
No, it was definitely we had to fit it into, his script. So I would say that the stage itself was sort of like the footprint of that. I tried to make as close as possible to SNL, and like I said, the home base and the Billy Preston and the Wolverines, those things, but everything else. Um, I didn't have a lot to go on. I'd been to SNL. I'd know what that main sort of formal hallway was. The other hallway where a lot of action took place, it was painted blue. That I don't think existed in 1975. The control room was not exactly where it is today, but it was close. But I wanted a window that you could see to the stage, which they don't have that, but so that was sort of a new twist on it, and all the other, and uh, George Carlin's dressing room. Those things we had to sort of figure out because I didn't really know exactly. There was no evidence of where those things were in 1975. And it was a two-story set too. So, and the camera had to move through environments. And so we taped out the whole thing first. We treated it like, really like you would do a Broadway show or a theatrical piece. We taped it all out from the elevator doors to the back of the stage on the whole stage. And Jason, we would take a script and he would say, let me read this opening scene. Lorne comes out, he does this, he does that, he makes a turn. So we had to sort of like fit the script. We had to fit the set into the script timing wise, which was kind of a unique thing too. So we, like I said before, we honored a couple of things that were, iconic, and there was no way it could be better, and it shouldn't be better because it was amazing. And sort of, and the rest of the world, we kept close to what I think it was, but made it work for the story.
Did you have any consultants helping you along in your research process or design process who were involved in SNL at any point in time?
You know what? I really didn't. There was I don't know. Early on, I didn't. I had gone. We'd gone there during. We were fortunate enough to go there during the writers' strike because we were down for a while than that. And I just walked around. I took all sorts of pictures. There was a couple of like things framed in on the walls that sort of told me a little bit about the set, and they're in some books. There's a couple of like plans, like a couple of things that I thought were amazing was like the seating, the blue seats that they got, which was on top of the scaffolding. Um, they borrowed those seats from Yankee Stadium because they were so scrappy. They treated everything like I said, Eugene O'Neill, who designed the set for almost the last 50 years. In the first episode, he was like, from the theater, and you have to get your resources in the theater and find, they don't give you much to go on. So they borrowed the seats from Yankee Stadium, and the story was Steinbrenner was like, take the seats because I know I'll get them back because this show doesn't sound like it's going to last. So we replicated those Yankee Stadium seats, which was, kind of really cool. And so I don't know. So some of those things that we got in there were really pretty cool. And I just saw that from what I remembered and walking around there and taking little hints of the nostalgia that was in there from the Kraft Macaroni Hour and trying to get that in, and then really just walking underneath the scaffolding there, which was totally like a temporary setup. They put the scaffolding up, put seats on top, and they didn't know if the show was going to last, and that they had to like just get it together really, really quickly. So I don't know, just knowing what I knew, but I didn't really have anybody on that end that I could ask. Hey, what was this like? This we had the prop guy, our prop guy, Michael Bates, was in touch with the prop guy there, who started, I think, in maybe 78. So we had a little bit of advice from that. And the cue card guy, we were in touch with him. So we could find out some of those little sort of things that fall inside the art department, which were certainly great, 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 great details. But the big scope of it, I sort of just ran with through what was documented historically on paper and on video.
That's great. Well, I want to ask about a few specific pieces. You mentioned the bricks earlier. Obviously, that's such a great running theme throughout the whole film, and they make such a big deal in the film of the authenticity of these bricks. It's going to lend authenticity to the moment and to the show. Tell me about the importance of these bricks for you and how you were able to get the authenticity of these bricks right all these years later.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was when I read that in the script, I was like so excited about that too, because because it said a couple of different things. It was like um the bricks it was like a heavy thing to do. You had to get these bricks and they had to come to the loading dock and you bring them upstairs and lay them down. And put the trowel down, the cement. It was like a big process that certainly maybe didn't needed to be done, but it said something about the difficulty of pulling off this show. You have all these stuff to do, and we're going to use real bricks. Like, are you crazy? Just put down some linoleum. So that like said something really big about it. It also created a really cool square timepiece of let's, very slow in the beginning, are they going to get it done? And also, and they do get it done. And then the last brick goes in, which was like, just like, you want to get behind it. And the fact that none of the old regime is helping this new guy out. And they're all just sitting there going, that's not my doesn't fall into my jurisdiction. That's 204, steam fitters and stuff like that. But by the end, they're like, wow, this is pretty cool. Let me jump in. So it did so many things for the movie that were just amazing that, maybe not everybody knows, but I certainly knows the difficulty of the heaviness of pulling something like that off, and they're going to pull off the show. The fact that it created a timepiece and the fact that it was also a rallying tool around the crew to get behind this thing and pull the show off.
That was so good. You also have Muppets in
Oh
the
yeah.
film. Tell me about. I assume you created those, recreated those. Tell me about that process.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, the bricks, we had to make those
Mm.
because they don't make those bricks anymore, really, and we had to make some that were lighter than normal, so people can pick them up. So that was like a whole molding thing, which was pretty cool. But the Muppets, yeah, we got in touch with with the Henson people, and those were recreated for the movie. But I remember early on one of our trips to the SNL, we went to the museum. It's a museum in Astoria, Queens. It's like the television museum, and that whole thing on the Muppets. And we'd walk through there, and we met with somebody, and we saw those original Muppets that were on the first show, and it was great. We were able to recreate those, and I was able to recreate that moonscape that they were on. So yeah, we were super fortunate. That was really, a lot of fun. And those things, having those things on set, just like sitting there, it was just so inspiring. So
That's amazing.
inspiring. It was
Well, I've
fun.
only seen Saturday Night once. I can't wait to see it again. Part of the reason for that is I can't wait to see. I'm sure there are so many Easter eggs. As you mentioned, there are just layers upon layers upon layers in the film. So much happening in the background, foreground, midground. Tell me a few of the things that when I go see it again, what are a few of the things you kind of like hid in the background that you might not even notice if you're not looking for it? But I'm sure there's a lot of things hidden in there.
Um, yeah, I think that there's a couple of obvious things like, you know, I wanted to get that shark in there somewhere. So you see, like, not exactly what they had, but I wanted, we're gonna get some sort of a shark in there, and obviously you had the bee costumes, and you had some, sort of. If you look in the background of the dressing room, I have like sketches of cone heads and things
Mm.
like that, which see. But I think some of the things that you will see is like the big picture photo of Toscanini outside the control room, and that was like a big sort of thing. Every time Lauren went to the door and he saw Toscanini, because that Studio 8H was built for Toscanino and the NBC Orchestra, and he came over from Italy, and it was a super sort of conservative, serious thing, this major conductor. So you wanted this face off of Toscanini and Lauren and the history of that studio, saying like, what are you doing with my soundstage? Like, you better take care of it. What is this? So it was like history and making history. So that's like a thing that maybe a lot of people don't know, but it's interesting. I don't know, and just like the history of some of the other shows that were in there. If you look around, a lot of the road cases say, different things from the Kraft Macaroni Hour. There was like things in there. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that they begged, borrowed, and stole to make that show happen. And so there's a lot of like, I don't know if you look at some of the road cases, some say, like whatever, Battle of the Network Stars, some shows from the 70s that you really that they just were like, I need to, I need to borrow a flat, I need to borrow lights. There's just, I don't know, there's certain things like that that you could look for.
So good. Well, I love your work on it. And throughout your career, I've noticed how often you work with the same director. You partnered with the Coens for many years, Bennett Miller, John Krasinski earlier this year. But like you said, this was your first time working with Jason Reitman. What do you look for in the directors that you talk to? How do you know you're going to work well together?
You know what? That's a really interesting question. And it's kind of hard because you have a meeting with them, and you have, in this case it was like now it's all Zooms and things like that. People are not in the same place and stuff like that. But I don't know, I just had like I think I know pretty quickly if I'm going to get along with somebody for a long period of time, 6 8 months. In this case it was even long because we had the writer's strike in there. But I'd seen a lot of his work, and I identified with the way, just his personal, I don't know, just the dialogue, the written dialogue that he creates, and the personality he brings out in his movies. So I felt like, because that's kind of like, those are the kind of movies I like. I like well-written, dialogue movies that I think I could, help out with the production design, and tell the story through the visuals. And I just felt like I said before, I felt like I can make a difference in this movie because it's just, I'm so versed in it. And then he was just such a nice guy, and that I knew that I could get along with him. And and even the word on the street was he's just like really cool to work with. And so I hope I do, I hope I get to work with him again. And but yeah, but there's something, yeah, I have worked with the same directors mainly, and I feel really fortunate about that, because you really start to understand somebody over, a certain amount of time, and that's really a good thing. So it was awesome. I loved working with him. He was just so cool. Smart guy.
Well, speaking of working with the same directors over and over again, Bennett Miller just announced that he's making his next movie again. Have you spoken with him about that film?
I haven't yet. No, no, no.
Hopefully we do soon. I know we're all excited to see it. Well,
Yeah.
last question before I let you go. You've worked in so many different genres over the years: westerns, contemporary dramas, historical dramas, all sorts of things, comedy, horror. Is there a genre or like an era that you're dying to work in?
Um, I guess maybe the future, because I really haven't done that. That would be I don't know, I just haven't. I've always been like a little, I'd say a little bit. I just haven't done it. It's not out of my comfort zone or anything. I just had like, it's something that, you know, I I haven't really. So, maybe not so far in the future, but it would be interesting to do something that's a little bit ahead in time.
That's awesome. Well, Jess, like I said, I loved your work in this film and loved the movie as a whole. So thank you for telling me more about it. I appreciate it.
You got it. All right.